Hi, welcome back to the Sustainable Advantages Climate Innovators Series podcast. I'm here today with Jared Draper of the Toole Design Group. Jared, tell us about who you are, what you do over there at the Toole Design Group.
Thanks, Dustin. Like you said, my name is Jared Draper. I currently lead the Raleigh office as the director for Toole Design. We have over 20 offices across the country. My background is in urban planning. I'm a senior planner here and recently became one of the owners at Toole Design Group. And so really excited to be part of this company. I guess what I do here, I work with a team. We collaborate on a variety of projects. And really our goal as Toole Design Group is to think about people-focused spaces and mobility. So we are a group of planners, landscape architects, engineers that really emphasize mobility and changing streets and trails, that emphasize how people can walk, access transit, ride a bike, instead of trips in a personal vehicle.
So basically when a city or any kind of, I guess, do you also deal with commercial kind of setups as well when they say, hey, we want to kind of look into how we should handle our transportation strategy going forward? Is that when they kind of tag you guys in?
Absolutely. Yeah. Most of our work is on the public side. So most of our clients are municipalities, regional organizations, even state governments, departments of transportation. However, there's always this growing group of developers on the private side that are really thinking about mobility and transportation in a brand new way as they do their developments. And so there are times that we get pulled into those types of projects as well.
So how did you get into this then? So what kind of made you choose to get into this, I guess, consulting?
What a great story. Well, this seems like I have to start way back, but growing up, really my kind of summer jobs and even jobs during school were around construction and labor. And so did a lot of manual labor, got to undergrad and then grad school and really focused in on humanities, thinking about people, and really got into urban planning by simply entering a Google search that said people plus changing cities, and thinking that this was like construction plus the people side. And that's how I kind of ended up in urban planning. Really was the perfect fit because I love the idea of thinking strategically about how systems and networks can work together. But really the impact on the built environment is what I think is the most valuable piece, because that's what impacts our lives every single day. So after grad school, I actually worked for a city for 5 years in Colorado. So understanding kind of the public side of that work and doing permits, and a lot of great and not great stories from there. But then ultimately realized that what I cared the most about was how people walk and bike in their communities and what they have access to and don't have access to. That's a pretty small, there's very few opportunities for that on the public side. It's growing, but really saw consulting as the best way to get that as part of my job every single day. And so there's a handful of companies that do this exclusively, and Toole Design is one that has been around for over 20 years and one that I've been following for a while. And so put my name out there several different times and finally had the opportunity to work here. And I've been here for a little over 8 years, and it's still one of the best professional choices that I think I've ever made.
So in terms of that's actually a cool story, because I guess that's a story that you would have to be a certain age to be able to undertake that story, where you can actually Google search for what do I want to be when I grow up, and then push it in, right?
Yeah, I guess it was right when you could actually do those kinds of searches, and
Yeah.
so it felt like maybe I hit the jackpot on my Google search.
Yeah, the fact that you mentioned that you actually put a plus in there was like, yeah, that's the sweet spot for me too. So kind of pivoting away, I guess you mentioned that there's not a lot of firms that do this kind of planning consulting. So I guess that's what differentiates the Toole Design Group away from other consulting firms. So if let's say I'm City of Raleigh, and I say, you know what, I just have this space. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, or we need to build our transportation plan or something for the next 10 years. If I don't think about bikes or people, if I'm just like, hey, we just got to build a plan, how do I how does Tool Design Group kind of wedge themselves in there? What's the process to be like, hey, you have another option?
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll back up just a little, because I think that, so you're right, there are a lot of consulting firms that do planning, design, engineering out there. And I would say that even in all of those firms, whether they're really large or really small, there's a lot of great people that have some of the same passions and kind of ethos as we do at Tool Design. I think what really sets us apart is that it's like us being a mission driven firm, thinking about people and the way that they kind of move. That's like our sole focus. And so we don't have like a small group that's doing this kind of work, and then another part of our group widening highways and building things that we think are detrimental to not only like culture and society and environment. This is like all that we do. And so being mission driven is something that I think sets us apart. It's actually one of the reasons that we also say no to certain projects, because we don't believe that they have the same value on adding real benefits to our communities. And so some of out loud, being a mission driven firm at Toole Design is something that we're really proud of. We're woman owned. Jennifer Toole has been at this work, and she is a North Carolina native, so that's really exciting. For a long time, we believe that there's a kind of a new way to think about transportation that kind of moves us away from a traditional way of thinking of it. We really believe that ethics and equity and empathy are things that we should be leading with. And we have some information on kind of what we call the 3 new E's. But internally, we have a lot of shared values that we talk about often. And it's around how we collaborate, how we can be really good stewards, how we can really elevate our expertise in this realm, and really advocate for social justice. And so those are things that I would say set us apart. And I think when a community has choices about doing a plan, doing a project, sometimes everything that we are aligns with what they want to do. And sometimes there are kind of bottom lines of, we've worked with this other firm before, that we can move through the process a little bit more quickly. And there could be, costs and time constraints and all of those things. I would say that often we challenge the way that our clients think about a project, and that can take some time, but it's all because we're challenging the way that we internally are always thinking about those projects and how we can make them better as our communities change and shift due to challenges as well as opportunities.
Yeah, I guess I've seen that some, working with you through the Cary bike group, right? So the bike focus group, and seeing kind of how it's not always, okay, here's where we're going to put a bunch of bike infrastructure. It's more like, here's how we're going to communicate about bike infrastructure. Here's how we're going to communicate about what the goal is, and kind of backing up to build the momentum, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's less about the nuts and bolts of where should we put in like a roundabout or something. It's more about, if we get people a shared value system in there, then you can make lasting change. I guess that's kind of the idea, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you hit it right on, and obviously that the Cary bike plan is a really good example, but I think it's one that we see over and over again. The what is oftentimes easy, and honestly, it's something that we kind of start with at the beginning of a project. It's a community has said, we want to do this thing. That's the what. The understanding of why and the value or benefit that it has when it's done is actually the harder part to get through, but that's what creates lasting change, and starts to change attitudes and impacts culture rather than just saying, here's what it is, right? I think about my kids and the number of times I answer the question, well, why? And, if I just dismiss those all of the time, and I can't say that I always answer them, but if I dismiss them all of the time, then I'm not teaching them to think for themselves or to be critical thinkers, right? We want our kids to be curious so that they can learn and kind of grow. In the same way, we want our clients and projects and communities to do the same thing. And so we should be answering those questions about why.
I think that's kind of a different approach than I would expect many places would take. So let's talk about how it's worked out. So maybe some successes or some failures, and they don't have to be from Toole Design Group. You kind of alluded to when you worked in Colorado that maybe you had some spectacular failures or something. But I'd love to hear about, a project that you were really proud of first and something that really worked well.
Yeah, I mean, this is
Don't say Cary because it's not done yet.
it's not done yet, and I expect it's going to be a success. We can start with failures. I don't know if I could point to like a project as a whole as a failure. I think there's a lot of aspects of failures and different things that we've done, whether it's been the way that we've done engagement for planning projects or even design projects that they weren't as inclusive as that they could have been. They didn't reach like a representative group of a population. This is a bigger problem with planning historically, is that we have just kind of let the squeaky wheel and those that are the loudest in the room dominate the conversation and direct the path. And so I can list numerous of those when I was on the public side where we were trying to push something through, or there was a project that really would have been beneficial to so many people. And because there were a few really loud people, that completely altered the direction, and that engagement didn't give voices equal platforms. It created a hierarchy, and that's not what was the intent. That shouldn't be the intent. While at Toole Design, I think that we've had projects that we've worked on that had a lot of community support and that had very little political kind of backing. And because of that, at the end of the day, they failed. They, had really good ideas. They had things that people were excited about, and the plans weren't adopted, or they were adopted and they sat on a shelf because people didn't think that they had a lot of value. And so that kind of support and momentum, and I think that goes back to the emphasis on the why is so important. Want to talk about success, because I think there's a lot of success too. Unless you have a question.
Yeah. Let me jump in. I had a question on the gap between community and I guess the political side of things is interesting, because generally you would expect those things would align, and I guess when they don't, it's somewhat problematic. So how do you close that gap? Like, what have you seen anybody? Is it just a matter of, hey, community, go get engaged with your city leaders, or is it like vote? like, what is it that simple?
I don't know I don't think anything on the political side is that simple. I do think that bringing elected officials and decision makers into the process very early is essential. It shows that they're not up on a dais making a decision without any other kind of voices behind it, right? You want them at the meeting where there's 100 other people talking about this and giving feedback. You want them hearing and giving their own input on the projects and the process as it's developing. And so that becomes such a valuable piece. At the end of the day, there are some times that you won't change minds, and I don't think that we're not in a business of just changing people's minds. We're in a business of kind of thinking through and being like critical thinkers on the work that we're doing and giving really good evidence on why it can be valuable to a community. So hopefully that answers your question. I don't know if I can't, we're not the gap closer.
Right. Yeah. You're not the gap closer. I was more thinking about people who maybe are listening, like, okay, how can I close that gap? But I think that's a reasonable way to think about it. All right, let's talk about a success.
Yeah. Right now, there's a lot of, past success that I think about, but in this moment right now, there's such a big emphasis on safety at the federal level, roadway safety, and there's a lot of money that's also available for communities that are trying to prioritize safety, which is a kind of a crazy thing that we are at a place where we have to say we are now prioritizing safety. And that ultimately means that in the past we probably weren't. And so I'm, in addition to, bike plans, which I absolutely love, and other kinds of planning efforts, been really working on several safety action plans, often called Vision Zero, which is kind of a brand around eliminating fatal and serious injury roadway crashes. And so one of the things that I've been really fascinated about in that realm has been working with communities to rethink kind of everything. Roadway safety and changing culture around safety is not like just a top down, elected officials, decision makers down. It's also a bottom up, where you have to actually have people in the community that say, we care about this a lot. And that needs to infiltrate kind of daily conversations and the way that we, talk to coworkers and families and others. So recently we did a regional safety action plan in Northwest Arkansas that because of it, one of those communities really kind of said, we recognize the value of this change, and we want to like pursue things that are out of this plan. We want to take a lot of action steps. And they committed to that, and simultaneously said, we're also going to pursue a really big federal grant. And we're awarded, I believe is the second highest of the kind of funding program, for $25 million in safety funds, to really kind of, I would say, kickstart a few projects that will radically change their community when it comes to roadway safety and access to transit and walking and biking. And so huge opportunity there. That's in Fayetteville, Arkansas. So I think that's really cool. But the other part of the success there is we're starting to do things really differently, where we, instead of saying like safety is just something that one of the things that we're looking at, we're kind of using this safety as a blanket. Cary bike plans are a really good example, where we're just saying we're not going to lower our standard to have bikeway infrastructure that is not safe. So we kind of like eliminated the need for that to be a lens that we look through, because everything we're looking through is about safety already. And I think it's a huge success for the future.
Yeah, I mean, $25 million for Fayetteville, Arkansas, which is not like a huge city. So
Not at
that's a
all.
pretty big game changer.
Yeah.
And I think that hopefully they can get the speed bumps and the corridor changes that need to happen in place. But that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
And of course, when the roads are safer, then you can get some more bikes and people out there too. And then I see the
Yeah.
strategy. This is good. All right. So one last question for you. Kind of like a magic wand question. What's your 30-second thing that you wish would happen so that Toole Design Group, mobility improvements, like what's the one thing that you wish would happen?
Wow. Things I think about all the time. I really think that if we could just emphasize separating users, and we could just start with schools. My kids, they walk to elementary school, and that is like such a delightful part of our day. If I could wave my wand, I would say that every city within the 1 mile around their schools was the safest place to walk, ride a bike, jump on a bus than anywhere else in their city. And that we wouldn't say that the big streets, the highways, or the arterial type of streets that are in those areas are like too hard for us to deal with. I would say that like my wand would just make all of that safe for the kids and families, teachers, administrators to get there safely and not feel like they're taking their life into their own hands. So there's my wand.
As a guy with 4 kids in the house, I support your wand, and I'll be over here waving my magic wand too.
Perfect.
Jared, I appreciate the conversation, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Dustin.